Anybody have a nomination to move to accept the minutes, or anything need to be changed?
I make a motion to accept the minutes.
Second. Anybody? Second. And a second. All in favor? Approved. Okay, I think that's all we need to cover in the. You want to do the opening remarks now?
Sure. Just want to close the regular meeting.
We can do that. I wasn't sure if we needed to do those before we close it or not.
Close the regular meeting.
Okay, we'll do that, and we will do the remarks.
Thank you. The chairman's opening remarks for tonight's meeting. I'll read those for Mr. Kendall. The properties that are subject to tonight's hearing have been advertised and posted as required. Blue Ridge must review each rezoning or annexation request according to standards adopted by the Blue Ridge Mayor and Council, and every public hearing must be conducted according to the adopted procedures. A detailed copy of the standards and procedures are available on the table behind me. After the hearing is called to order, the petitioner will be allowed to present his or her proposal that is the subject of the zoning request. Failure of the applicant to be present will void the proceedings, and an adverse recommendation is forwarded to the Mayor and Council from the Planning Commission. After hearing the petitioner, the chairman will open the floor for comments from anyone who is opposed to the request. All persons who want to speak in opposition to a zoning request must complete a form that is available on the table again behind me. The form deals with financial contributions made to political candidates. The person speaking should first give their name and address for the record. We request that all comments be limited to germane issues. If there is a spokesperson for any opposing group, then remarks from the spokesperson are welcome, and any other comment should be different than those addressed by the spokesperson. We'll also accept any letters or petitions for the record. The chairman may poll the audience regarding support or opposition to any issue. Attacks on the character or personal integrity of any individual during the hearing are discouraged and will be ruled out of order. Rebuttal time will be allowed for the petitioner. If in rebuttal new issues are raised, the opponents may also have equal time to address the new issues. After rebuttal time is concluded, the public hearing will be closed, and no additional comments will be accepted except in direct response to a question from a Planning Commission member. The Planning Commission will deliberate after the close of the public hearing, hear from the recommendation of the planning staff, and will make a written recommendation to the Blue Ridge Mayor and Council.
Thank you. We have two items on the agenda this evening. First is a proposal to rezone approximately 1 acre of land bordered on Ada Street, River, Davis Streets from an R2 current zoning to a C2 general commercial. And the second issue we have on the agenda is consideration of the sign ordinance requirements and amendments to include the deletion of an article in the zoning ordinance, Article 17, provide for a new Article 17, and this is an amendment that has been submitted to us from the City Council, and there's a copy of that available. So that'll be the second item on the agenda. So the first thing that we are going to be doing is the zoning request.
Yes.
To start out with, as he just explained, if we have someone here that is representing the applicant or representative that would like to speak in favor of what they're explaining to everybody.
First of all, let me apologize. Some of you are here for the second time on this. A little over a year and a half ago, we came before you and requested the rezoning of a half acre. The whole parcel is an acre. And at that time, asked it to be taken from an R2 to a C2. There wasn't much discussion at that time. It was pretty vanilla. And I don't think we went through any of this at all. Matter of fact, we didn't talk very much about anything. And it was approved. Of course, you all know that it got to the City Council, and the City Council turned it down. And now there's litigation. And we will be going to trial. And I see that the city attorney's here tonight. It's the first first time I've ever seen him in one of these rezonings, so he must have something to say. But mine's very simple, and we're raising a constitutional issue this time. We didn't last time because it was vanilla. I mean, I've been doing this for 40 years. It's the first time I ever came before something to be rezoned, that everything around it is that way, and actually been rezoned before, and then it was turned down to city council. So let me go through this step by step. And Roy, the constitutional issue is on the table in this, which is on my application. And as planning people, we know what that means. It gives me another alternative. And let me take it another step. One of the reasons that I'm here tonight is we are going to go to trial. And this is the first step in mitigating damages. He'll understand that. It's the right thing to do. If this all passes, is that the damages would stop then on the suit we've got. The suit I've got will stay in place because we've been harmed very, very much. So we haven't been able to build, we haven't been able to do the things we want. I'm not going to talk about the project. I'm not going to talk about it at all. It's, basically we're asking to do an extended stay motel. And the extended stay motel was extended stay because you have kitchenettes. And so we stay 21 days. Everything still goes into the city's coffers as far as tourists, as far as bed tax. Enough said with that. Let's talk about the issue and what is unfair and what's not right. People by the name of Tolles in 2012 bought this piece of property here, which is zone C2. It wasn't at that time. It was zoned the same as this. It was zoned R2. And they came before you all and said, we want to build, a small alternative extended stay facility there. They talked about 8 to 12 units, okay, which is easy to build there. Remember in C2 we can go 3 stories. But no one wanted to do that. What they wanted to do is build something quality, just like we wanted to do. In 2012, this residential piece of property, which is pink right here, so you understand, was rezoned, approved by planning and zoning, went to city council. Guess what? Rodney Kimball's the one that made the motion to rezone this C2 to build an extended stay small unit motel. No one ever really thought about the fact that with that they could go 3 stories. That's not what they intended to do. But there's a lot of misconceptions of what can still be done with that ground the way it is. We don't want to do anything that's not right. We want everything to be right. So we bought this other ground, which now makes it an acre. But you can go ahead and build a really, really nice facility. Okay? Forget about the facility. Think about this. This is 8th Street here. This is the feed store. Zone CBD. It's for sale. They're going to do something with it. Somebody's going to develop it. This piece of property here is a White House. It's zone CBD. It's for sale. And a piece of property in between, I'm told if you write the right offer, it's for sale. So this whole section is CBD. Now we got, down at the end, we have a real estate office right there, which you all know the name, Rhonda Thomas, real estate office. That's zone CBD. This whole side basically is zone commercial. We go right up behind it. It's Hampton Square. Been there forever. It's commercial. And the commercial, it uses it has various uses. We've seen restaurants in there, we've seen jewelry stores in there, we've seen bagel shops in there. It is commercial any way you look at it, CBD. You go up behind and you've got River Street. Of course, there is a cliff up there, but up behind that, you got a car lot, you got a BPT station. Zone's commercial. So far, everything within this, including the pink area, this is all zone commercial. And there's a line, you can see it's blocked out. You got River Street, you got 8th Street, and you got Davis. So what we requested was this piece of property be zone C2. Now you get CBD, this becomes C2, it's all C2. You go across the street, of course, I know where you live, but right beside you, you got a club. You have to go to a boys' motorcycle club. It's not commercial, but they're there. Motorcycles are there all the time. You go the other way across the street and you got Chef's Farm on the other side of Davis. That's zone C2. We never talked about that the last time. You know, it actually encroaches over into what council objected about. So you got across Davis Street, you got a C2 piece of property, you got C2 all the way around it. You got CBD here, you got CBD here, and C2 there. Now you could say, when they voted to change that, it was logical with what was there, which we paid to tear down. It was going to go commercial. Something's going to happen. You know, there was one derelict house there, which was terrible. And we tore it down in the Pied Piper. You had a fluke going across it. The rats were running out, and we knocked it out with the bulldozer. It would amaze you. The other one, we had someone bring up the fact that, you know, there could be people who are unsavory people. Well, the one duplex I drew down, there was one drug addict in it, which I had to use.
Please don't say that, because he was my friend.
I'm not talking about,
You're talking about Shane.
No, I'm not talking about Shane.
Okay, because don't.
Okay, I wasn't talking about Shane. I had another one upstairs. Shane helped me with that. Hey, Shane took care of my property, okay?
Okay.
And when Shane got ready to move, because he couldn't afford to move, I gave him money to move out to the trail. Shane was my friend. I probably knew him longer than you did.
Yeah, it's okay. I still understand it.
So it was the person upstairs I had the problem with. So, you know, you talk about what was going in there. There was already a problem there. But we cleaned the whole thing out. We cleaned it up. We changed it around. And it logically should be zoned C2. Commercial, CBD, commercial CBD, commercial C2, and across the street there's a piece of C2. It's divided by Davis Street, Ada Street, and River Street. The logic is the ground should be zoned that way. And that's the basic request. It's not what's going to go there. What's going to go there is be very nice. But for some reason, what was done before, and it was good enough to be zone C2, now it's not good enough to be zone C2. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. The reason why. Probably never going to be any more residential there. Doesn't make sense. Economically, it doesn't make sense. Up here, you take the cost of ground and double what was purported to be there originally if you go 3 stories. That's not going to look right. So you got 3 stories there, and then what would you come up with on the other piece of property? The other thing of it is, if you look at Ada Street, and part of what was said was that it starts Ada Street to being commercial. Well, if you drive down Ada Street, there's a movie company down there on Ada Street. If you drive down Ada Street, there's a car service place. You can get your oil changed, if that's what you want. The logic of it is the future of Blue Ridge is there's not many corridors that are leading out into property that's vacant. At the end of Ada Street, you already have the industrial park. Also on Ada Street, there can be access to the old concrete plant off of Ada Street. The ground's already owned by the same individual. So it's not a traffic situation. It's what's already there and what's coming. And Sandy, I know that you put a lot of money in your house. But the money in the house in the future is probably going to be some doctor or attorney wants to have it, put an office in, and you're ready to sell it. So the logic's already there. If you look at the other main corridors heading that direction, Ada Street's the only one that gives growth potential. What's going to happen? It may happen slow, and will happen slow, but it is going to happen because it leads out into the industrial park. It leads outside of town. So what we go back with is, you know, we already started, I think, to keep the place mowed, we keep it looking good. we got a good project in mind. C2, 2012. It was voted on. The totals were not even at the council meeting when it was approved. Went before planning and zoning. Planning and zoning approved it. They were given some misinformation. They got here at 6:30, 6 o'clock, soon after that was voted upon. Kendall made the motion to go C2. It was voted on, approved. They came to the door and were concerned that it might not have been approved. They said, oh, it's been approved. So there was no statement ever made before City Council about taking a piece of property like that and zoning a C2. Now, I know City Council is not your problem, that's my problem, okay, which we're recommending and hopefully resolving it. But the continuation of this and what should be done and what rightfully should be done falls upon your shoulders. We did it once. We respectfully request for it to be done again, so that we can go ahead and look forward to a nice project. Okay. Any questions?
How many units?
32.
How many stories?
2.
What's the acreage?
1 acre.
0.65?
Pardon?
Is it 0.65? I
No,
mean, that's what I saw.
it's 1 acre.
Okay.
That's
With
1
all-
acre.
The
Okay.
part you're asking to.
Oh,
that goes
yeah,
into-
this is not the acre.
Total of 1 acre.
Yeah, in the original statement, it said that this was an acre. No, it's not an acre. This whole parcel is 1 acre. It's one block.
Parking available you would be for how many cars?
There's no parking off-street. There's 42 parking spaces inside the project. All
That's
of
what
them.
I'm saying, on the project.
Yeah, there's no off-street parking. You enter the project off of Ada Street or off of River Street.
What about Davis Street?
There's no entrance off of Ada Street.
You know how little that street is, Steve, right?
I know how small River Street is. I know that Ada Street needs to be widened. So, you know, the utility that's there, you know, you got 32 units, you're gonna have people coming in probably, mostly off of here and right in the parking lot. When they leave, they can go back out and back up to the top.
Planned buffer along Ada Street?
Yeah, no, not on Ada Street. There's a planned buffer on Davis.
Yeah, I'm at Davis, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, my mistake. Are you're, as I'm understanding something that I read, and maybe it was in the original filing, or one back in 2014, that there would be, the developer would be doing some widening on Ada, is that correct?
Sidewalks.
So adding a sidewalk.
Yes.
Okay, can I just ask you a question? Because I'm kind of confused on it. Is this not in mediation about the number of units?
No.
It's not?
No.
Y'all have not gone to mediation?
When we looked at mediation didn't do anything. Actually, mediation was totally unacceptable.
Okay.
Totally unacceptable. So there's no mediation on units. It's 32 units.
What's the extended, okay, this is my question. What is extended stay? Does it mean, how many days is that? Because once you go so far in extended stay, it becomes an apartment.
First of all, you can't do an apartment in that zone, okay? You can't do a condo in that zone, all right? It's an extended stay because it has a kitchen, a living room, a bedroom, and a bathroom. And then the suites of the lofts, they have 2 bedrooms with a loft upstairs and a kitchen and a bathroom.
Okay.
Extended stay is a suite. How many you drive around, you see, you know, Longhorn suites or whatever, where some come in and being in the real estate business, you gotta understand something that's going on right now. People are getting older and driving the gravel roads up to a cabin that isn't all what makes a suite for them. You know, they like,
Right, I totally understand that.
they like to be downtown, they like to be able to walk to downtown.
I think what she's asking is what's the maximum length of stay?
Right.
21 days, basically, to make it, you know, so it finds under the hotel motel act where we get the revenue goes back to the city.
So you wouldn't have someone in the unit for 6 months or a year or whatever?
Typically not, but to be very candid, if someone checked in to stay 21 days and they left and came back,
I understand.
you know, and that's something you can't say, oh, you can't do that. I mean, that happens right here, you know, in our motels that we have already. Is that people come in and they're not extended stays, but they're over 30 days. You know, and it's up to the proprietor to make sure that that registry goes in so that the hotel funds still come to them. It's a luxury for people who want to be close to downtown and be able to walk to downtown. You get 32 units there. It's a big economic effect into downtown. A lot of dollars.
It's also a lot of traffic. It's a lot of traffic. It's a lot of traffic, and like, I'm just thinking about it because I walk it every morning, Steve, and I think that it would be a great project. But what I'm concerned about is I'm concerned about the traffic and the buffer between residential and commercial. You add 32 cars to that, if you're full, do you know how big, have you ever sat there and watched the traffic on the corner of Mountain and Ada Street?
I have, and those 30 cars are going to make that much difference because they come right down and turn right into the project. I mean, they're not going on down the street. They come off of it and they go into it, or they come down, you know, Davis Street and turn into it. They're not going.
Or they come down Davis Street. Do you know how little Davis Street is?
Oh, I know how little Davis Street is. Most of the traffic's going to be coming in off the mountain. That's where it's going to come in. It's 32 units. And remember, when they arrive, they're not going to go back and be driving downtown. They're not going to be looking for a place to park downtown. They're going to park the car there and they're going to walk downtown. So someone checks in at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the car's probably going to sit there until the next day or when they leave.
What's the signage for indicating the entrance to the motel going to be?
Be on 8th Street. It's just straight through is what it is. It's a courtyard.
Do you have a rendering of what it's going to look like? I mean, I see that, but do you have a rendering of what?
The site plan?
Yes.
Yes.
You have like a, shows the you not sure what you call it, the vertical, I mean, for you're looking at what the motel's going to look like?
Yeah. It's amazing. Went through this last time and no one even asked to see anything. Not before planning and zoning and not before the commission. No one wanted to look at anything. They just wanted to say no. Let me do it like this. This is the way the units are laid out. If you look at it logically, this would be unit number 1, coming into 8th Street, moving to the courtyard. This could be an exit. Could be an entrance.
So parking's in here.
Parking's totally inside.
They need to see that. That's good.
There's nothing off the street.
What's the square footage of the average of units?
The 1 bedrooms are 480 square foot.
Okay.
That's with a kitchenette. It's a bedroom. It's a living area. And a fireplace. Now, the lofts, which are over here, we can see the steps going up. They're about 1,100 square feet because you've got the first floor, then you have a loft area, setting area, a bath, and a bedroom upstairs. This is the way the project actually looks. 8th Street coming in, sidewalks. In the center here, there's a little laundry area and office facility, and all the parking is incorporated inside. Again, I want to emphasize this, okay, this has been going over a year and a half. All right? When I came before planning was running for, no one even asked me to see the plans. No one even asked that. I went before city council turned down their ask to see a thing, but offer showed that they didn't want to see it.
Well, we're asking. Come on.
I
We're asking.
I understand that, but you need to know what I've gone
She
through.
wasn't here before.
No, I said, you know, some of you, thank you.
Wait, Jenny, do you want to see this? Because Jenny lives here too. Show her, Steve.
Okay, this is 8th Street. Cars come up, you can see it's two-way. Comes up, comes in, parking's here. Okay? Exit can be on River Street. come in on River Street to get here.
I'm worried about what's gonna happen to this street, because this is the most pitiful, and you know it is, it's the most pitiful, pathetic street in the whole world. You have to kind of like take turns to go down that street.
Yeah.
So, I'm saying,
If you look at what we've done, ingress there, ingress there.
doesn't matter, they're gonna,
But if people come in from up here, they're gonna go in here, they're gonna drive all the way around here. If
Well,
they
I'm
come in-
hoping.
Well, they wouldn't. Why
Okay.
would they? They're gonna come in and go here, or they're
Okay.
gonna come in and go here.
okay,
You know,
And when they exit, they would be going back out the same
Okay.
way.
and can I say something? The street probably has something, should have something done to it. But it's not up to a developer to do something to it. But it is, we can put enough money into the city, because the city's got something doing to it, just out of the bed tax there. I mean, turning the bed tax down is thousands of dollars.
but,
Property tax
This
is,
is sidewalk all the way around,
yeah.
and would be some buffer in here as far as landscaping or
Well, that's
whatever.
why this is offset over here, so we can buffer this whole thing. It's the only part that there's any residential, but remember, that's C2 over there. And as I said, you know, other than Sandy's place here, that's a rental, and the guys have a motorcycle club there. So what's that from here? Because Sandy's the one who has the whole thing across the street. She's already got commercial property for, you know, CBD property.
so are these sidewalks, is that what those
That's
things
exactly
are?
what those are.
Okay, cool, okay. All right,
How many lots do you have?
6.
And how many bedrooms are they?
Fix it, 1 bedroom down, and up above you go into the loft with the sitting area, bedroom.
My question on that, since we're looking at the thing, I didn't realize the size of the units last time because we didn't look at this, was that if you've got 1,100 square feet, that's pretty typical of the whole county for a house. And if you can ideally stay for 21 days, check out, and then check right back in without even moving your luggage, as long as you do it on paper, these people can live there year round.
You can, but it'd be awful expensive.
Well,
I mean,
Is that bad?
it'd be very
I don't know,
expensive.
is it?
I mean,
But is that residential? is that residential? That's the
Yeah, well, because
question.
then
I
we're
mean,
talking
I
about
guess-
orders
I
of a
could- I could
different
say-
color, it's an apartment
But
complex.
it's not. But I could say,
It could be.
no, it can't be. I mean, I could stand here and say that can't happen, but it would be telling the truth. It already happens in the motels around here. I mean, people come in, you know, to stay for a week, and they stay for 3 weeks. And the reason the loft is that size is that upstairs you got a bedroom, you got a sitting area, you have a bath. And it sets over the first floor where you have a bedroom, okay? And this might upset you too. You may know that too. And you've got a fold-out sofa and so on in the 1 bedroom. People come in with the kids, they can fold the sofa out so you can sleep 4. Now, if you have the loft, you can sleep 6. But go over to Comfort Inn, you got the same thing. You know, there's no policing or control of what can be done. I've never pulled any punches about this thing to start with. It is what it is. It's a nice project. It's good for the community. It produces revenue. It brings that area up. As I said, if I don't want to do this, I can go back over and take what I've got and build something else and probably get 18 units. It's going to be 3 stories with garages underneath. And I told you that before. I didn't
You
want to
do
build
whatever, yeah, I know that you own it, and you can do whatever you want to do with it, Stephen. I'm not trying to be your enemy. I'm trying to ask the
I'm not
questions.
taking it that way. I'm getting alternatives of what can be done. You know, at a point in time, with a financial hurt, you're going to do something.
Well, you know, I just want to be clear on what we're doing, because when I was first approached, it was like cottages. And the next thing I know,
It still is cottages.
it's extended stay. What does that mean?
Extended
Nobody
stay.
really knows what that means. Okay, and I'm not gonna argue with you. I'm not trying to be adversary. I'm trying to find a compromise that makes this work for everybody. So I'm like, if everybody wants to go forward with this and they want to do a huge buffer, and I'm gonna tell you, me personally, with the sidewalks, I think that's a great idea. I don't think there should be an exit out here. I don't, because that just encouraged, and the bottom line is this, is when they come out here, it's like Ada.
If you eliminate this exit, then you will have some traffic around this.
Okay,
By
all
having
right.
that exit,
This is a less traffic pattern you got. You're gonna have people coming in this way to go in, you have people coming that way to go in. You're not gonna have that many people that are come out and go this way, they're gonna come out and go that way. And that's the reason it was designed, to eliminate as little as you could on Dana Street.
the other consideration that we have to look at as a commission is, number one, we're not considering whether to approve extended stay motel or cottages or anything else. We're talking about changing a zoning thing from R2 to C2, meaning that I'm seeing what you're going to put in, and I believe you're going to put it in. And my personal feeling would be one thing, but I have to look at it also, is what if something happens and you leave and the truck runs over you, God forbid, and this goes up the thing, it's now C2, and someone else can come in, buy it from your estate and do whatever that C2 allows. So the thing is, that's the decision we have to make, along with looking at what you're planning to put in. There's no question in my mind that you're going to do this. None.
Today, let's say today.
But you understand what I'm saying?
I understand too. Let's say today that it doesn't go C2. We still have C2 there. You can put a Dollar General store there.
Yeah, down where the C2 is.
Yeah, it's right over here. It's
Right.
C2.
I understand, and leaving that, there's no control over if it stays R2, anything that could be built in there R2, there's no guarantee it's going to be attractive or whatever. There's no guarantee where the traffic's going to go.
Someone said to me when this all started, "I'll build a halfway house, Steve." I said, "I don't do that." So,
But I understand your logic with these two entrances, and I really believe by doing that, you eliminate, because if you kill
I'm hoping
this,
so, because that's a pathetic street. That's all I have to say about that street, Steve. It's pathetic, you know what it is.
that's not my fault.
I didn't say it was your fault, but I'm just getting you to acknowledge
we all
that's
agree, we all agree,
pathetic
we all
street.
agree it's pathetic street.
It gets better with that.
Let's go on and look at the rest of the elevation.
You're just
I'm assuming it's going to be wired properly, so we'll.
Oh, it's.
Oh, God.
Didn't we discuss it the last time that there would have to be upgraded electrical, sewer, water, the street, and the electricity right there on the corner at Brown CDC, that would have to be relocated. Now, I'm assuming that there'll have to be like those little substations or whatever, little power substation things within your parking area for like power and stuff like there is in motels.
Yeah, you're gonna have to run power boxes, but that's nothing, that actually has nothing to do with, that's worked out with Tri-State.
Well, everything you do on the side's going to be underground, right?
Exactly.
You're still gonna have those above ground little power boxes that you're talking, which are
Just right on the edge.
huge.
No, they're not.
Yeah. They're like, I mean, like they're bigger than a car, I'm saying.
No, they're not.
Well, the one across from my business is.
Well, I don't know what's across from your business, but you know, that, an underground power, unless you've got a transformer, and I can't believe you've got a transformer on the ground.
I don't know what it is, but it's over there.
But that's not what you're going to be.
Because there is a motel across from my business. And it probably has, let's say it's got 60 units. There is if you're saying it's a power box,
I
but
don't
it's
know.
as big as a car.
What he's saying is there isn't going to be
Yeah.
one of those here.
Okay, but with 32 units, will you not, how will you support that kind of power unless you had one of those? I'm assuming that they're having to dedicate that because of the usage of power.
Get my transformer, you just go with the duplex transformer right up River Street, you know, which would be back there. And I don't know what transformer's back there now because they're feeding power to Hampton Square. So, and you know, you got restaurants and everything else, it's got to have juice. There's your elevations.
Seen all you need to see.
I just wanted to see the layout of it, how much buffer, and, you know,
Do we have footage from the back of the thing to the edge of for the buffer? On,
If you look at the plat, you can see that there's sidewalks in there.
on David Street behind there, it shows the footage for the buffer? I heard you say something that it was offset.
It's right here.
I can't see over there that far, what does that say?
it doesn't show how many feet, how many.
Well, you're looking at, there's a scale right there. So
And
you're
I have
looking at-
no-
It's probably around, from here to the outside edge is probably 30 feet. That's
Okay.
20 some feet or something.
Okay.
And obviously there would be landscaping along.
Yeah, actually, you can see in some of the areas here, we have actually marked out some areas where it's just locked in. And there's where the dumpster sits, right back there. It's already sitting on my ground now, because Hampton Square's already used it. The dumpster's still sitting there now.
Okay, so there are HVAC units in back here behind here within the buffer zone.
How many stories?
Two.
This is the opening?
What's your,
Right here?
It's a driver's plan.
Okay, is that 6 by 6? We have people.
No, that's 30 foot there.
Okay. Do you have people that are coming in with trailers or anything like that? How are you gonna park them? What are you gonna do with them?
Not at the moment.
what's your anticipated break ground date and start construction if you get approval by the city council?
Well, just going back and go through everything I did before, with financing. I quit. And we got turned down and we filed a suit. I mean, all the numbers were in place, financing was in place, and I just walked away and sued the city. So it's starting over from scratch.
So what are you looking at?
Yeah, if I push it, probably 6 months.
In the interim, just maintain it as it is.
So we've done, you kept it mowed, kept it clean. You know, let people park on it when there's things going on in the city. Someone says, why don't you put someone out there to charge? That doesn't make any sense, just let them park.
Okay. Anybody else on your behalf? No. Lynn, we thank you very much. We have it open for those that would like to speak in opposition.
I'm not really speaking in opposition. I'm David Siphon, and I'm the city attorney. I was asked just to come and provide y'all some information and also be available to answer questions of a legal nature and also sort of explain to you options, because a lot of times a lot of planning commissions think the only thing I can do is say yes or no, and that's not accurate. That you've got other options other than saying yes or no. And do want to address a few things that Mr. Warrior said just from the city's viewpoint. He talked about all around the site, but of course going north up Ada Street is a residential neighborhood. And of course right across the street is zoned R2. So currently, the zoning of the 2 tracts that he's asking to rezone is consistent with the property across the street and going north. He mentioned back in 2012 that these 2 parcels here were rezoned to C2, and that's accurate. What you need to know, though, is when you add up the square footage of this parcel and the square footage of this parcel, it's only 4/10 of an acre. So it's not a big parcel. You're not going to get a Dollar General on it. You're not going to get a CVS on it. All those type of chains have form construction and have form stores that require a certain shape and a certain size, and 4/10 of an acre is not enough. So at least right here, that commercial development, if you assumed it was appropriately zoned, is going to have limited commercial uses. And I think the people at the time were talking about maybe putting in 8. I've heard 8, I've heard 10, I've heard 12 residential units there. Well, there's a big difference between 12 residential units and 32 residential units. So I think when you start talking about these two parcels and therefore you ought to rezone it, it's not comparing apples to oranges, because it's a much more intense commercial use. And thank goodness, it's not my decision, it's your decision whether to make a recommendation or not as to whether that use is appropriate. As Mr. Warrior said, this has been rocking on for about a year. And so I've had a year to sort of think about this and think about, okay, is there a middle ground, something that makes sense that would protect that residential neighborhood and yet give Mr. Warrior a reasonable use for his property? And of course, I go to the zoning ordinance. You know, that's where you start, especially if you're on the planning commission. And I looked at the zoning districts that are available for your consideration. And they are basically asking for C2, as near as I can tell, because under C2, a residence in and extended stay in is an inherently allowed use. So if it's zone C2, they can put in that residence in. When I'm looking at, though, this entire area, you know, to me, for a lack of a better term, you almost got a transitional area, this area here, that sort of is the border between commercial and residential. And when you look at the zoning ordinance, another zoning classification that is available with some work is the C1, which is a limited commercial designation. And again, me thinking about this, what I like about C1 is that it throws out some of the more intense commercial uses. With C2, and you know, again, somebody brought this up. I assume Mr. Warrior is true to his word that, you know, this extended stay, residence in is what he wants to do. But once it's zoned C2, then any inherently allowed use can go in. And, you know, if someone said that if he gets hit by a truck, well, that's absolutely right. If he gets hit by a truck, there's no guarantee that an extended stay motel will go there. And if you rezone it to C2, then it can be an animal hospital, it can be a car shop. I was going to go through, and I don't know that I want to read them all to you, but C2, your general commercial zoning designation, has some of the most intense commercial uses that are allowed under the zoning ordinance. And so that kind of concerned me. When Mr. Warrior says that he'll build a 3-story or 4-story, under C2, the highest level, the most you can build is 2.5 stories. So there's not going to be a 3-story structure on this property, or if you rezone it this property, I think under C2, the maximum height is 35 feet, and under C1, the maximum height is 30 feet. But it basically says 2.5 stories is the maximum height. One thing that I had thought of, if y'all
What's the
are
height on a
interested.
story?
I'm sorry?
What's the height on a story?
I think it's
35
about,
feet would be more like 3 stories.
I think.
What you can do is this, you use parking underneath, which is 8 foot, and above you have 2 12 foot. So you've got 3 stories, parking underneath, and that's the way it works.
And I would agree with that, height can be 12 to 16 feet usually. One thing about the traffic, and I've heard the traffic concern, and a thought I had that may help. Everybody agrees River Street's a bad street. And everybody, I think, agrees that you don't want traffic going up into the residential neighborhood north. So a thought that I had that might be a reasonable solution is that if you're going to rezone this, and I'm not suggesting you should, but if you do rezone it, C1 or C2, then you limit as a zoning condition. And for those new members, y'all have the right, and so does the city council, y'all can recommend what's called zoning conditions, and conditions are requirements of the zoning that mitigate or try to prevent a harmful impact to the rest of the neighborhood. And a zoning condition that I would suggest is that you limit them to one entrance on Ada Street, and then you make the exit a right only. So that way people still could come in, and they still could come in, but when they leave, they would have to turn right and go back into town, so to speak, rather than going out Ada Street. And again, I don't want to say that's going to be a universal 100% effective, because even with a triangular traffic median, you always get the jokers that'll drive around it and, try to go the wrong way. But you could minimize it where you're sending traffic away from the residential neighborhood. I did want to mention to y'all, again, like I said, you have the options of just saying, yes, we're going to rezone it to C2. You have the option of saying no, and there can be good reasons for saying no. I assume Roy basically did his same staff analysis that he did before. Currently, the property is R2. Property right across the street is R2. It is in that transitional area. There is one theory of city planning that says that you can have a domino effect, that, once you rezone something commercial, then it just eats its way through the residential neighborhood. And so that can be a valid reason for saying no. At least in the staff analysis from the last time this came up, which I assume Roy did basically the same thing this time, he did indicate that a C2 commercial zoning designation could have a negative impact on those residential properties, and that's one of the factors that you consider under your standards, under your zoning ordinance. Also,
I think looking at his recommendation, it was that that the C2 should not extend north of Davis Street.
And I understand that recommendation, and again, reasonable minds can disagree about where you draw the line.
But that's based on what it was.
Right.
Looking at it wasn't just not C2, it was that it be limited to no further than Davis Street.
Right, I understand. But I will say to you that rezoning this property from R2 to C2 goes against your future land use map, which is the planning document by which you're supposed to make zoning decisions. Basically, that future land use map is part of the comprehensive plan, and it's supposed to guide zoning decisions so that you're just not making ad hoc decisions as these things come up. The concept is that you have an analysis of where the city wants to go, and you enact zoning to follow that analysis and to accomplish that plan. And in theory, you know, people that buy residential property on Ada Street would do so in reliance on that future land use map saying that their property would be protected because it's contemplated that it would be used as a residential area in the future. So I wanted to point those out to you that it could obviously be denied. Thank goodness it's not my decision, it is your decision. I did try to come up with a middle ground, and it's a little complicated, and it's complicated by the fact that right now what he's telling you is that we're going to develop these 4 pieces of property as one unit. Well, there's nothing that requires that. And again, I would suggest to you that might be a zoning condition that you would want to impose. But to impose it on these 2, it would mean they would have to go through rezoning too. I've suggested to you that you might want to consider the limited commercial. Okay, under your zoning ordinances, it's now written, limited commercial, C1, does not inherently allow a residence in an extended stay. But I think you as the Planning Commission can recommend that basically we change the ordinance to allow as a conditional use. And a conditional use is not an inherently allowed use, it's a use allowed by permission by the City Council, that we change for C1, make the residence in the extended stay motel conditional use, and then we could do that for this property.
And if that didn't happen, then it would just revert back to straight C1 for anyone else that didn't do that specific thing.
That's correct. And since my middle ground is a little complicated, I sort of drew up in writing sort of the proposal that would give hopefully y'all some guidance. And I wanted to quickly go over it so that you can kind of understand what I'm saying is a middle ground that you could do. You know, one thing that concerns me about the situation is, like I said, right now the only thing before you is these 2 tracts. So right now we don't have anything that limits under a C2 what these 2 tracts that are already zoned is C2. So I'm suggesting as part of your recommendation that that there be a zoning condition that all 4 tracts be developed as one unit. I don't think Mr. Oyer's going to object to that because that's what he's telling you he's going to do anyway. Then, as I suggested, we'll have to make, under the limited commercial, a resident in as a conditional use. And then what I did, I went through the zoning ordinance and thought, and looked at all the inherently allowed uses under C1, and basically threw out anything that I thought might have a negative impact on the neighborhood. And at the bottom of page 1, you'll see that I suggested 8 inherently allowed uses, and then the 1 conditional use of the extended stay hotel motel. As part of the zoning conditions on the property, I was also going to recommend to y'all that y'all can look at limiting the number of units. And of course, Mr. Warrior may not be happy about that. I'm suggesting 16 units for a 1 acre piece of property is a reasonable number of units for a 1 acre piece of property. My home that I live in today is a little bit over an acre. So when you start talking about putting 42 cars and 32 units on where my house by itself sits, it sort of staggers my mind, because I can conceptualize how big his property is because I live on an acre. And my house is not the biggest house in the world, but I got a wife and 2 kids, and we had trouble parking 4 cars on our driveway. And then you're talking 42 cars going into an acre of property.
Plus, we've stated here an additional 10 parking spots for staff.
Yeah, and again, that was just an estimate that seemed reasonable to me. You know, he's saying 42 units or 42 parking places, so he did 10 too. But if you have day staff and night staff, when I was in college, I was the yard boy for a hotel, so you know, that helped me conceptualize, well, you got to have a laundry room, you got to have maid stations, got to have maid carts, you got to have a maintenance shop, you know, you got to have an office. All that's going to go on that property too. So I'm suggesting to y'all that maybe 16 units would be a reasonable compromise. That would be more units than he could put on there under just a pure residential designation. I think he could only put a max of 10 units there under a pure residential designation. So it is increasing his number of units. I'm also suggesting as part of the zoning conditions that you limit the extended stay to 21 days. That seems reasonable to me. I think Mr. Warrior in the past has said that a room would go for like $175 at night, and for a 21-day stay, that's going to be roughly $3,000 to stay for 21 days. I don't know many families that can afford, you know, just for the room without thinking about food and whatever else, a 21-day stay at $3,000. So I don't think that would hurt him. I think it would still allow his extended stay facility to operate.
I think it was 21 days that he was talking about. Isn't that part of the definition of the extended stay? I mean, that's what I heard. I looked under the ordinance and under the definitional section for residency and extended stay. It does not have any provision currently that creates. Put it in as a specified.
Right, it's not specified. So I'm suggesting to you, you may want to specify that as a zoning condition And then also specify that there's got to be a hiatus of 30 days in between stays, where you don't get the game of, well, I have one 21-day stay, and then I'm going to have another 21-day stay, and then I'm going to have another 21-day stay. And I think that will keep it in accordance with his proposal of being a hotel motel as opposed to a residence. I suggested square footage. I'm fine with the square footage that Mr. Oyer suggested, so you can change that as appropriate. I think for the extended stay facility, though, that as a zoning condition, you need to describe the square footage, the heated square footage for the number of units. And that could be any combination that you think is reasonable. I also think as a zoning condition, again, to minimize the impact to the neighborhood, and he basically said the plans show it, but plans change. So again, if you make it a zoning condition, you know it's going to happen if he develops the property that way. You make a zoning condition that there be a sidewalk on all three sides, and then I'll leave up to y'all as to whether to do a vegetative buffer of at least 15 feet on all three sides. Standard sidewalk is 5 foot width. I would suggest at a minimum that you do as a zoning condition the vegetative buffer across West Davis Street. And then as Mr. Oyer suggested, you may want to limit as a zoning condition that, there's no access onto West Davis Street. And then if you like my idea about only a right out, you might only have an in on River Street, but no access out. You could do that. So what I drew up was just something that I was trying to think of a way that would be fair to Mr. Oyer and yet try to protect the neighborhood. And some of y'all may like my ideas, you may not like my ideas. Won't hurt my feelings at all for y'all to improve upon and modify any of those ideas. My main goal today was just to be sure that y'all understood that you're not limited to just yes or no. You can be creative and say yes, but with these conditions, if that's what you want to do. And that just sort of gives you a third choice, third option, and it gives you something else to think about other than just the pure yes-no decision. And I'll be glad to try to answer any questions you have. And I'm not trying to put words in your mouth with this, but as I said, it's kind of complicated, and I thought it was asking too much of y'all for y'all to try to write all this down, so I tried to make it easier by giving you something that you could easily modify if that's what you wanted to do. So that's my presentation. I'll be glad to answer any questions, and hopefully I've given you something else to think about.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you for putting it down in writing so we do have something we can work on exactly that way. As much as you brought up some, anybody else that wanted to speak in opposition?
I would just like to ask, did anybody here ask for legal counsel on the planning commission? Did you ask for Mr. Siphon to show up this evening, or he was voluntarily here? Was there a request by any of you that serve on this board to have him here tonight?
No. I didn't.
Okay, that was my second question would be to the as well, is there is a summary given to you, and
And you, I'm sorry, you are
Brenda Battaglia.
in your
I'm a business
residence?
owner here at Christy Lee's Courtyard Grill, and I also am a partner in Ada Street LLC.
And the rest of your question, I'm sorry.
These conditions that Mr. Siphon mentioned, I would assume that these conditions are the first time that have ever been brought and proposed to the Planning Commission.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
And I think it's a good idea that he gave you a summary. I don't have a problem with that, but why have there been other projects that have been rezoned that he has never appeared, or has anybody from legal counsel for the city approached the commission
I can't answer that.
with these summaries and with these conditions and suggestions, because this is the first time?
Yeah, since it's the first time, I can't answer the question why someone hasn't in the past.
My other concern would be, because I'm a vested, interested party in this community, and I appreciate what you do, would be that when somebody buys a piece of property and you rezone it, there really is no guarantees if that individual passes away. You referenced that. Several of you did, even Mr. Siphon. If Mr. Royer was hit by a truck, there's no guarantees what that project would end up being. But all the other projects that have been rezoned, I assume that has never been brought up.
That's very true, and I think that's why the attorney was talking about the option of putting it such that there was a conditional use, and if that didn't happen, then it would only be available for that. In this instance, what he's suggesting as a possibility would be going C1 rather than C2, which is a limited, C1 being limited commercial.
Let me ask you, if I was to, or if any peers in the community or myself to invest further into property, would it be a condition in all future projects or in all future rezonings then? That
As
is,
I understand it, and
would there
you
be
can correct me
limitations
if
at this point forward, since he's suggesting that would be, you have to understand that would be my concern, because
What I'm suggesting, technically it's called a text amendment to the zoning ordinance. And the text amendment, well, it's going to be a two-step process, because right now, under limited commercial C1, a residency and a extended stay hotel motel is
This has
not.
gone far enough. It's gone far enough. It's gone far enough.
I'm
The only
speaking,
reason
sir.
he's here
I'm
is
speaking,
because
sir.
this is part of what's going on with city council.
I'm
There's three,
speaking, sir.
and I'm speaking over you right now.
Well, yeah, but
Yeah, you are.
You
And-
have
and
a right to
Steve.
respond.
Wait a minute,
Steve, let him finish.
He's here.
Wait a minute. I'm in charge of the committee. We'll have one person speak at a time, and whatever he has to say, since he's brought up some different issues, you will have an opportunity to come back and have a rebuttal.
Okay, and just so you know, Mr. Siphon interrupted me and I wasn't done with my questions. I'm going to let him continue because I respect him being here as
I'll let
legal
you finish
counsel
what
for the
you-
city, but I was not done.
I was just trying to answer her question, that's what I was trying to do.
Go ahead.
But you weren't given the floor, Mr. Siphon, and I appreciate your legal ability in being here, and I want you to give me the answers that I want to hear, because I would like to continue my development in this community and be a big part of it, but I want to have some clarity. You have to understand that.
I understand, totally.
Yeah, and we want to keep this a very nice community, but we want some growth, but we want to keep it that nice feel. My next concern would be, that was brought up, is 1 acre on this parcel here, 32 units. Comfort Inn is on 2 acres, 64 units. I just want you to be aware of that. I think that's a good reference for you to have.
Thank you,
I think that's very important as well.
thank you.
I think one answer to your question about whether this was asked about any other properties, yes, it was brought up on the Stiles property that we just, at the last zoning meeting, whether or not, let's say they didn't develop that as they said they did, and we did discuss that in length. And I don't think it's contingent to this or that or anything in the future. It is just always a possibility that if you say this is what you're going to do, that never comes to fruition, that something else does. And I think that's been brought up at most of the ones that I've been on, and I've been here a year. In fact, this was the first one that I sat in on.
The,
Is that a part of, Roy, when you go out to do your assessment, does that come into play with your opinion?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Every time I've approached the city council, I've always advised the planning commission to not rezone a project based upon the project that's presented. Look at the text of the entire zoning ordinance of what is allowed in the particular zoning category and expect that that could be a possibility.
right,
In fact, part of the property that Mr. Oyer and Ada Street LLC owns at this time was actually rezoned from residential at the request of a realtor who advised the city council that they were going to build a real estate office.
okay,
And the property was rezoned CBD for a real estate office, and that never occurred. So
Okay.
And there was another tract next to the BP station that a plan was submitted to the planning commission of a proposed building. Once it was rezoned, that never happened. So yes, ma'am, I always point out that,
okay,
and I never have recommended that the planning commission rezone anything based on what the project is purported to be at the time.
right.
All the possibilities are exactly that, they're possibilities.
And the only other thing too I'd bring up is parking. That was another, that was addressed here about parking on a 1 acre. You know, we have a huge parking issue in Blue Ridge. I know, I own a restaurant, and I have no parking, and the numbers, they pile in, and they find a place to park. So it would make sense that if you have a very attractive extended stay that has 32 units, that has parking, that is going to be able to facilitate that vehicle to be there for the entire weekend, the week, the 2 weeks, the 3 weeks, to keep them off the road. Because of course we have trolleys now. We'd love to have a golf cart to bring people around, to bring them dining, to bring them to the stores, to be able to enhance the community. So I think that would only be a positive. Most people that come into this downtown area, I know that I talk to in my restaurant, I talk to many people all the time. They want to come downtown and they want to stay. They want to walk around, enjoy the shops, they want to go through the dining, they want to go look at, talk to realtors and see what's going on. A lot of people don't want to go sometimes up those mountain roads, especially as they get older, they get scared. And we're limited, as you know, in this community. I know you know that. I mean, we don't have enough places for people to stay. And this town is growing. It's a destination. Blue Ridge is known for that. We just came up the highway and there must be 4 billboards that say, "Welcome to the Blue Ridge Mountains," a getaway, if you've seen them, that the chamber has, that is all the way down in Valdosta coming up. So it's a destination, and there's just not enough places for people to stay here, let alone parking, as we know. So that's one issue I wanted to bring up with the parking as well.
Thank you. Before, I'll get right to you, but just so you're aware, before the meeting, before I came in, before I met our attorney and heard anything, question I had in my mind was, is there a compromise? Is there a way to do what we want to do so that he can do what he wants to do if we decide it's the right thing to do? Considering all of the, like I say, you got to go back to the beginning. As I understand the job, which I'm highly paid for, that if that's on the record, 0 if that's high, is to do what's best for the community and best for the people, if residents are involved and if there's a business involved, to try and get to a decision that is best for everyone and stay within the guidelines of the overall plan, which obviously, if this is done and it is not in exact accord with the overall plan, it will not be the first time that things have been done that aren't exactly in the overall plan. And that's if it was cut and dried, he wouldn't need us. The thing I had in my mind, and I appreciate your bringing in this in a printed form that I can look at, and I don't say that I look at it and agree with everything's there, but the concept of finding something so that you could do what you want to do, and that people that live around here could have the confidence that it's not going to affect them, then that's, to me, is what this is all about. But we do have to, like you said, and like I said 45 minutes or an hour ago, that we have to understand when we change a zoning, that if we don't have that, as you call it, conditional use, if it doesn't happen the way the project is presented, for whatever reason, anything that's approved in that zoning category can go in. Go-kart track, if it's permitted, it can go in. Now, there might be noise ordinances or something that will protect it in some areas, but the bottom line is what I'm saying. So if there is a way to accomplish what we want by somewhere in the middle that works for everybody, that's my thoughts. Anyway, you were going to share something, and then you were going to say something afterwards.
And I don't mean to overwhelm y'all with legal jargon. Under the limited commercial, right now, under the zoning ordinance, it does not inherently allow residents in an extended stay motel.
Right.
So part of my recommendation to you that for you to consider in recommending to the council is that y'all recommend a text amendment, a change to the writing of the zoning ordinance that would allow a residence in extended stay hotel motel to be a conditional use under the limited commercial. And a conditional use is a use that can only be done with permission by the city council. So it means that you won't have an explosion of residents in extended stay hotel motels, because a conditional use is really, to me, another form of rezoning, because it's got to get approval by the city council, and it's got to get approval considering the standards under the ordinance about impact to the neighborhood, what does future land use map say, burden on utilities and the like. So my recommendation, and again, that's why I gave it to you in writing, because it's a little complicated, but again, I was trying to find the middle ground. Is recommending to you that you recommend to them that, one, we did the text amendment to allow the conditional use for an extended stay in a limited commercial, the C1 category, and then two, that as a zoning condition, that you require that all 4 parcels be developed together, which means that the other 2 will have to go through a rezoning to have those conditions imposed on them. And then 3, y'all think about, for an acre piece of property, what's a reasonable number of units? And thank God I don't have to decide that. That's something y'all would have to decide. And make that a zoning condition. You may or may not want to do a size requirement. I do think you want to put as a condition a max of 21 days for a stay. As I understand it, you can't collect hotel motel tax after the 21 days. I guess because under the tax it's then considered an apartment. So that seems to be a reasonable compromise in light of the fact that Mr. Oyer's saying it's going to bring all this money into the city. Well, if they stay beyond the 21 days, then it's not going to bring all this money into the city. So that's a reasonable compromise. I think you make them have a hiatus between stays of 30 days so that you don't get the game playing of, I'm staying 21 days now, and then I'm going to stay 21 days next, and then I'm going to stay another 21 days. You got to do something to break that up. And then the other thought that I do think y'all can talk about and decide what's reasonable, but maybe having as the only exit the right out onto Ada Street, where you're flowing traffic away from the residential neighborhood. That makes a lot of sense to me. That's something very doable. You put that little triangle median that shoots them out to the right, and then they can have a right in or a left in. But it would direct traffic away from the residential area. So in one form or another, all those recommendations are in that written recommendation, and I'll leave up to y'all's good judgment, you know, which you choose, if any. And again, I'm not trying to suggest to you what you should recommend. I was just trying to give you options and something for y'all to think about.
Thank you, appreciate that. Mr. Lloyd?
I liked when the council came up tonight and said, I'm not here to speak against this. Right off the bat, he came in here with the intent to speak against the 32-unit extended stay motel on an acre ground. And Brendan brought up exactly right. The company then on 2 acres got 64 units. You know, the way it's designed, you know, logic says if someone comes in off Mountain Street, they're going to turn left into the project. Now, if I was going to go out and I knew about it, I could out on River Street and turn right, and go back up and go out the traffic light and get out of town. There's nothing wrong with what we've done. This is purely political from him. Ask him why and who asked him to get here. It's the same people I've been fighting since day one. Okay? There was a mistake made. That should have been approved day one. It was approved the first time by the Planning Commission. It hasn't changed. Tonight you were curious enough to look and see what I was doing. First time no one ever asked. Before I went before City Council and I read it the last time, they never asked. Didn't want to look at my plans, didn't want to look at my plans, you just turned it down. And you think about why. It's not because there's anything wrong with that ground, it wasn't because they're worried about growth going out into Ada Street. It was a very personal thing.
Let me ask you a question. Where would you be at if we did decide to look at a compromise? To do a C1 with that allowance in there for you to be able to do what you want to do?
Do my 32 units. You know, and the C1 protects you, fine. You get to 32 units on there. I use the same format, the whole thing. Doesn't make any difference. I have no intent of hurting anyone. Okay?
No.
I have no intent at all.
I didn't look with a scale, but I'm assuming that if I did on your plans, that on that courtyard where the parking is, I would find that there's adequate 9-foot white spaces for
They're all there.
cars.
Yeah, and as I said, there's 42 there, and the 42 is just for extra parking. I mean, that place won't be maintained. You know, there'll be a management, you know, someone there on site because there has to be. You know, everything else will be subs. People come in the morning, they clean the place, they leave. Laundry comes in, clean the place, they leave. There's no laundry facilities or anything on it. It's no different than having, you know, a rental that someone comes in and takes care of. And the 21 days is where it's always been all along. I've never made any bones about that.
No, but I do understand.
The only thing of it is that, you know, enforcing it, they can't enforce it any place around here. You know, you look at it, they show back up the next day, well, fine. I mean, that's ridiculous. It's foolish. There's no enforcement police in a motel place. Think about it. It's a good project. I'd like to have the zone C2. Now, I want to do the 32 units. If you look at the numbers per unit, if you don't do the 32 units, then you may as well go back. And as I said, he thinks I can't build 18 on that, 3-story, half-story down, the others up above. I could do it. All I do is just reduce the size of the units a little bit.
Thank you.
I'm
Any other comments, pro or con? If not, I think we need to go on to the sign ordinance, just item 2, and then we will get through that. We'll close the public hearing.
You have received a proposed ordinance, sign ordinance that we've been working on for a number of years. And the ordinance was emailed to you, so you have an opportunity to review it. If you have any questions or comments, we'll be glad to answer those for you.
I went through with the revised version that came out. It made, I didn't see they gave them looked like the changes that they made that were logical and made sense. Anybody else have anything on in the public that has anything to speak in favor of it or against it? Do we have a motion to accept the revised sign ordinance?
Mr. Chairman.
Excuse me.
Close
Sorry.
Close the hearing. You close the public hearing and go into your regular meeting to render.
My bad. Sorry about that. They're on the pay cut. Okay, so we've got through that. We're going to close the regular meeting, and the public hearing, I'm sorry, and we will reopen the regular meeting. And we will take a look at the first things first, which would be the rezoning property located on Ada Street. Comments? Thoughts? I had a couple. I think that this is my personal discussion purposes. I like the idea of compromise. I like the idea of doing something that allows him to do what he wants to do and to be able to do it in a means that allows him to make it economically feasible to do it. I do think there needs to be some restrictions relative. I like the conditional use that the attorney brought up, which is what I was hoping to find out would be available. I think that having that second entrance on River Street, rather than being a negative, it spreads the traffic out, going out. It's not going to create, as I could see, any reason that it would increase or cause any traffic to increase on Davis Street. I could see if that's closed and you don't have the exit on River Street, that people could come down Davis to get around to the entrance on Ada. It would, if they come off up above, then that's where they would come. So I think having that is a plus from the standpoint of protecting the residents on the, I guess, the north side of Davis. So I don't see any objection to have, in fact, I see a benefit. I would be open-minded on the idea of that right turn exiting off of Ada to take it down, away from it. I don't think it matters on River, because if most people are going to go left, go down to the intersection. If they turn right, they're going to go up Davis up to the top. You'd have no reason to go down on Davis. So that's my thoughts on those. As I understand, am I correct, Roy, if we decide to do something to go to like a C1 with the conditional use, that we would have to send something to the, we have to do something about amending and send it in. We can't, if we wanted to approve a change in zoning to a C1 with a conditional use, does that, what we write out, revise it, we've worked this as a base, changed it to whatever we wanted, we agree on, it still has to go back and then come back here, is that correct?
Yes.
What's the time period on doing that?
If you send a recommendation this week, the next regular council meeting is the second Tuesday of July. And then if you come back, if the mayor and council made that recommendation or suggestion back to the planning commission, we would come back in August for a public hearing, and then your recommendation would go back to the city council the next month.
So whatever decision, short of making a yes vote on the C2, if we decide as a group that we want to go with the C1 with the conditional use in there, we would send that to them. They would either approve it or whatever, and then send it back to us.
Yes, sir. You can make the restricted use or C1 recommendation to the council, and the council could accept that recommendation because it is a more restrictive zoning category than is C2.
So it wouldn't necessarily have to come
We
back
wouldn't
to us.
necessarily have to come back, but we would have to amend the C1 ordinance statements that would allow the extended stay residency in, because at this time, those.
So it would be a hearing whether the ordinance would agree to be extended.
Yes, there is a process by which we would have to adhere to. It's not as simple as making this recommendation to the council and the council accepting it at the next meeting. process we would have to follow.
Gotcha, thank you.
Then they would have to reapply for rezoning for the two lots that are already, that are C2 right now, and have them rezoned to C1.
That's correct.
So we'd have to go through that again
Yes.
on both.
Could be simultaneous, but yes.
Okay.
So it'd be a two-step process, basically.
Yes.
That's enough for me. How about y'all?
My question is, can we vote on this since it's in court? And if we do, if we vote in favor of you, is that not undermining the council? And if we vote against you, is that not undermining you, which then could be used against you or the city? If we vote either way.
Can I answer that question, or
Yeah.
is that fine, Mr. Chair? Legally, each rezoning application stands on its own merits. And the fact that y'all were presented different information and more information at this zoning hearing doesn't mean that you're bound by your prior decision. So my answer would be that yes, you're not limited in making a decision due to the pending court case, and you're also not limited to what you decided previously, that each application, stands on its own merits and based upon what's presented to you during the zoning hearing and the other information that you have, including your ordinance and documents and whatnot. And secondly, y'all are just a recommending body. So the council is the governing authority. And under the Zoning Procedures Act, under Georgia law, for a rezoning decision, only the governing authority can make that decision absent a constitutional amendment to the Georgia Constitution that would allow an administrative body like you to rezone property. So secondly, since y'all are a recommending body, I believe you have full power and authority to make whatever recommendation in your judgment you see fit.
So what you're saying is I get ulcers, but I can't make a final decision.
That's correct.
Comments? How do you feel about that idea of doing a C1 approach with the authorization of the conditional use, so that if something would happen, for whatever reason that it didn't go through, that it would be then, you have the C1 limited commercial there that would limit what could go in, versus the C2, which would be anything within the C2. I think, to me, that I don't have it. If I had a home on Davis Street, that would be certainly something that I want to consider.
I like the thoughts of that.
I don't,
And some of the proposals that brought to light.
I don't have a big issue with the 32 units, as long as it's documented that there's some parking in the middle to handle it. I agree with what's been said and what the other lady said as well, and what he had presented. I mean, I think that people coming in to a place to stay, residential wise, hotel, motel, whatever it is, downtown are gonna park their car in there, and they're gonna walk to whatever they wanna do. That's why they wanna be downtown. So I don't see it creating, particularly if it's such that you don't increase the traffic on Davis Street.
Right.
I like the thought that coming down the River Street would only be a right-hand turn, that it wouldn't be an exit. So that way you could only come in River Street. You'd have to exit Ada Street, and that would be a right-hand turn as well. That way that would effectively
River Street's one way.
deter. Right. So if
you're
you're coming
going to
down
come out,
River Street, you could only,
you can only go right on River Street when you come
I'm
out.
talking about coming out of your property.
That's what I'm saying.
That
can
you
only
could
turn right.
not come out of. Oh, that's right.
It's just,
No, I
it's
got-
one
that's
way.
right.
You can only come out.
That's
It's limited anyway.
You turn
That's
right,
right.
then you turn left, and you go back up
That's
to
right.
Main Street.
Turn left, yeah.
That's right.
I think, I understand what he suggested. I think if we do decide to go that C1 route with the conditional use of spelling out in there that it is a 21-day thing, which would concur with what it is going to be, just simply states it. I don't have personally a big thing about having a long hiatus in between stays, because I think the rate's gonna, I don't see someone wanting to live in one of those units on a full-time basis with the kind of rate it would cost. I think that would.
I think that the rates though, that's a discretionary thing.
Yep.
You know, that's, you can charge whatever you want to, or you can not charge whatever you want to. And if somebody, if you're gonna say, well, look, I'll stay 3 weeks if you give it to me for $100 a night, are you gonna say, nope, I'm not gonna do it and let it sit empty for 3 weeks? No, we're not gonna do that.
Well, they could.
So I'm in favor of a hiatus.
I don't know, it needs to be 30 days.
No, I don't know that. No. 15?
I think even if it's just a week. I mean, no one's, someone isn't gonna live in a place and then
Move out for a week
leave
and
it
then come back in? I don't know, are we comfortable on voting on this right now without maybe kind of drawing up something,
we can do that.
you know?
We can do that, right? We table this?
Yeah.
And work up something and then make a decision on that at the next meeting? Yes. I think, does that make sense to you all? Give us a little time to get it, take what the outline we got here and revise it to what we
Yeah,
want.
just do this.
Yeah, I agree with that. Do we have any kind of motion to table it?
I'll motion it.
Second? Favor? So what, along that line then, what we probably, my thought is, since we've got this, is we want to sit down individually and kind of look through it, make some notes on it, what it is, and then we can
Yeah, and then go
compare
over with
notes.
Roy
Yeah,
and kind of
get it.
hammer out
Does
something.
that make sense, Roy?
Did you vote?
Beg your pardon?
Did everybody vote?
Yeah, on
did.
the table.
Oh, I just didn't hear anybody. I heard the motion in second, but I heard no vote.
Yeah, everybody did.
They raised their hands.
All in favor? There you go. Robert's Rules of Order may have been, kind of been a little bit there. Sorry about that. Does that make sense to just go through it and we'll put something together and then get it back and we can get it to Roy, get it informed and move on? And secondly, is the zoning ordinance, or not zoning, but the sign ordinance revision.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for, you need your,
Now I get it. Constitution.
any motion to approve the sign revision ordinance?
Second.
Second. All in favor?
I'm looking forward to getting you in court.
Do I hear a motion to adjourn? Any seconds?
Yeah.
See you
All in
later.
favor? Yeah, I wonder if it's gonna